You're listening to Play Therapy Community Podcast, episode 62.
Welcome to Play Therapy Community Podcast, providing connection, information, and inspiration to child therapists all around the world. Here's your host, a licensed psychotherapist, a registered play therapist, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of Play Therapy Community Podcast. Well, today's episode is a really special one. It's with a person that has been really influential on my career, and both personally and professionally, she's influenced me in many ways. I've learned a lot from her, so it feels like a big honor to have her on the show. Her name is Dr. Stacy Van Horn. She's currently a full-time faculty member and a school counseling coordinator at the University of Central Florida in the Counselor Education and School Psychology program within the Department of Child, Family, and Community Services, or Sciences, excuse me. She teaches graduate students at both the master's and doctoral level, primarily in the areas of career development, counseling with children and adolescents, ethical and legal issues in professional school counseling, and coordination of comprehensive developmental school counseling programs. She also supervises practicum students in the Community Counseling and Research Clinic on campus and school counseling interns throughout Central Florida schools. Prior to her position as a counselor educator, Dr. Van Horn worked as a professional school counselor for over 9 years in Orange County Public Schools in Florida, working with diverse students, teachers, and families in Central Florida. This lady is so very special and so very knowledgeable. I have learned so much from her. I originally started out in this career as a school counselor, so she had a huge influence on me. And thank you so much for being on the show, Dr. Van Horn.
Thank you so much, Jackie. It's so good to be here. I'm so proud of you, and congratulations on your podcast.
Oh,
thank you for inviting me to be part of it.
Oh my goodness, of course. Yeah, when I had the idea, it's like I got that giddy, exciting feeling inside. Like, oh, I can't wait. I hope she says yes.
Oh, of course.
So today we're going to talk all about the role of a school counselor because many of the people listening to this podcast are child therapists and many are parents. And I think sometimes it can get a little confusing and maybe vague. What does a school counselor do and what do they not do? And elementary versus middle versus high school counselor. So can you describe to us the role of the school counselor?
Sure. With a school counselor, you're really working within a team. And so that's such a great benefit is working with a team and stakeholders. And primarily, the three areas or domains, they call it, that we're focusing on for school counselors is the academic part, the social, emotional, and career development of students. And so, we talk about also the three C's of the school counseling role. And this really, I would say is similar, the same skill set in terms of all three school levels, with the counseling skills, how you collaborate and coordinate, but it does look different at each level. And so, starting with the counseling part of that, at an elementary, you're probably going to have school counselors do more classroom guidance activities and taking more of that beginning developmental approach. So you would have those, classroom activities focused on maybe conflict resolution or friendship and social skills. There's going to be more parent conferences when we talk about collaborating with parents and administrators and, of course, teachers. And in the elementary, more identifying students needing additional support. And sometimes that may mean eligibility into different support services, classes, exceptional education programs. Things like that are going to take place a little more in the elementary level for school counselors. Even though, the advocacy part is going to be there on behalf of students and families, but also on behalf of the profession in terms of the impact you're making and collecting data on those classroom lessons and some of those counseling to show what the impact is. So, that looks different than middle school where there's more small groups, less classroom lessons, but more small group interactions and interventions, I would say, focusing more on peer relationships. Peers are so important, throughout, but certainly in middle school, it becomes that peer group, even going into high school that, students connect with so much and are so valuable in their lives. Communication skills, and even though in elementary it starts, that career exploration part of it is a bigger component in middle school. And so starting to look at your interests and extracurricular activities, those types of things. And so, for counselors, that's more of the focus, I would say. And then in high school, the focus turns a little bit more to one-on-one counseling, even though the other areas of counseling are there, and there's still a lot of collaboration in terms of, school support personnel, and then also coordinating bigger events and assemblies. But there's more with advising, credit checks, career college readiness activities, testing, and of course the focus more on transitioning to post-secondary would be for high school counselors and their role in that. So, and there's so much more I can say, and I know we're going to have other questions, but I hope that gives a brief kind of breakup of the different levels and the school counseling role within those levels.
Sure, it does. And it just makes me think about how it can look so very different depending on what level you're on, and how important a school counselor is in the school, regardless of the level.
Definitely. And so vital. And so, even when people say, well, why elementary do you have a school counselor? I mean, it's so vital to get early on that intervention and to work on the social skills and conflict resolution and self-esteem and that self-efficacy and all of those things start so early on. Even the career and college readiness are benchmarks in pre-K. And using fantasy play in terms of role play and things that interest them, not so much what occupation, but just who they are and what they feel they're capable of doing. And so that starts at such an early age.
And I remember one thing that you told me that always stuck with me was that it's really important to educate others on your role so that they can use your services more efficiently, and really share with others how you would best be utilized. So maybe educate the teachers or educate the parents, educate the administration on this is what I can do and this is how I can help and these are the benefits.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's huge. That's a big challenge for some school counseling professionals in the field, where they feel their role is defined for them instead of them defining it with the expertise, the specific skills that they have. And so, we at UCF and of course all school counseling programs would really want students to graduate being able to articulate how valuable and impactful, because really the end result is having efficient and effective learners. And you can't have that if you don't have the social emotional, the academic and the career part of that. But that social emotional has to be tackled. And for school counselors, that's a big part. But their role has to be defined and being clear on what that is that they're specially trained to do.
Yes, 'cause I think it can get confusing if you're not in the field, so it's so helpful to share that. Now, you mentioned the different ways that you can help one-on-one, small group, classroom guidance, assemblies, and actually working to identify students in need of specialized services. I think sometimes that direct interaction with students can get really kind of hazy for parents and teachers about what's different about that than, say, regular therapy in a therapy session.
Well, I think in therapy and having more comprehensive counseling in terms of going deeper, but like for instance, if you were doing the individual counseling for a school counselor, that may be a child or adolescent that had an argument with a friend or is feeling kind of blue that day, or having an issue that you can deal with, but there's not clinical depression involved, where they really would need outside therapy in terms of long term. With a small group, it might be, managing anger or coping skills or tools they can use in the classroom or at home. It may be dealing with their feelings when there's a divorce or a family change, or even working on social skills, practicing role playing with students in terms of how to make a friend. And then, of course, with classroom lessons, they would look at maybe study skills, or, even now we have the season of testing. We've got looking at mindfulness and different kinds of strategies that school counselors are using going into classes and teaching deep breathing to relieve test anxiety, or, giving them some coping skills that they can use when they get anxious or frustrated in the classroom. So those are some of those direct kind of contact or interactions. And you mentioned assemblies, character education and career day, violence prevention programs, Red Ribbon Week. Those are all those things that school counselors would do for direct. And you also have award assemblies like honor roll and those types of things. And then extracurricular activities, which, this part of it, I think, is really important in terms of school counselors get a viewpoint of not just in the classroom or when they're counseling, but like if they're on a sports team or they're in patrols or a peer mediator or other things that they may be interested, a chess club. And so for school counselors to work with students or observe them in different environments is really beneficial and a really neat way that they can interact with them and have the direct contact.
Yes, you get to see them in a different setting, it can be really eye-opening, but it could send a message to them that this person's here to support me in so many different realms. I remember one thing that you had mentioned to us. You had set up a educational setting and pre-planning, and you had the teachers come in and you had like a little lesson for the teachers, and just like everything you do, you made it fun. You like had something fun under their seat and somebody won something. But I think that's so neat how you didn't just teach us to work directly with the kids. You really kind of looked at the whole gamut of need to help out the parents, need to educate the stakeholders, and like in those assemblies, be able to share information, or the award ceremonies, be able to connect with them in so many different ways.
Yeah, I think definitely it's so important being visible as a school counselor. And oftentimes some school counselors get trapped or they feel trapped in their office. And to really take the initiative and to really get out there and be visible to parents and administrators and, of course, the students, most importantly, so they know who they can go to. It's very discouraging when you go to a school and you ask a student, who's your school counselor, and they don't know. And so really that's something that we push so much in our program. And I see it all the time where counselors are really out and about. And I do think connecting with, you were saying your audience is child therapists and play therapists, really connecting to community experts in the field that they can collaborate on. I think that's huge in terms of support. But what you were talking about is when I had teachers during their planning time tell me different topics they would like to learn more about. And it was kind of a mini professional development. And I had food, like you said, I had little prizes. And it was a little pick-me-up, and that's how I got them to my room. And then at the time, we would talk about, different techniques to work with students that were diagnosed with ADHD, or, what are some good classroom management tools, just 20-minute mini professional development activities that I would research, figure out how to present it quickly with a handout. But it was something that I knew had to be time efficient, but something the teachers really needed that would, my role was indirect to students, but it would benefit students and the parents. And so those are things. We even did one on effective meetings, how to have a strength-based meeting where we focus on student strengths, but still have the challenges in there, but it's really strength-based. And we role play that with teachers. So if they have the skills, they'll use them.
Oh, I love that. I just did a podcast episode on how to have a productive meeting. And I think it's so important to include the positives in there, because sometimes the things that are really they're struggling with seems to kind of take over. But you got to remember that the people at the table, everybody at the table is there for the kid. But, the kid has so many strengths, too, to be able to just recognize those can set a whole different tone.
That's so right. And it's not that teachers want to be negative, or at least most, I would say. They really want to help students, but they're frustrated. There's all these feelings that they're going through. And sometimes you've got 15 minutes to do the meeting, and it's in the middle of their break time. And so you've got to really make sure you're mindful of when are we having the meetings and really teaching them skills. So when they go into a meeting, they're ready also for what they need to focus on.
Yeah. And you can get right to helping the kid. If that's the main goal, then whatever it takes to make that happen and have everybody on board and feel supported is definitely a good thing. Now, I know with a school counselor is a very unique position. What are some advantages that the school counselor has?
Oh gosh, the advantages. I mean, it's just such a rewarding profession. I think there's so much impact that you have on students, and kind of seeing that throughout. It's not just over weeks, but it's over the school year and over many school years sometimes. I think also the advantage that is every day is so different and unique. It's exciting. It's never boring. And for some that may be a negative, but for most it's an advantage in terms of You never know what's going to happen, but there's so many different opportunities to help students in so many different ways. I think also another advantage of being a school counselor is the collaboration with stakeholders, with also your team at the school. There's so many different ways to get support and to consult and to also work together in that team approach in that system of a school. And I think also, seeing students, like I mentioned before, throughout the day in their classrooms, during lunchtime, during field day, you really get a holistic view of this child or adolescent. It's not just a 30 or 40 minute time frame in an office. It's really all of these aspects and talents that really may not be seen in this one area, but then it's seen in this area. And so I think that's just so exciting, and I think that certainly is an advantage.
Yeah, it really sets you up to really be able to make a difference in the kid's life. And I know that just being there on the spot, they don't need to always make an appointment or set up a routine. It could be something that, and I remember you taught us this too, that sometimes you can put little appointment or little request to see the counselor out in front of your door, and then they can fill it out, and all of those things can make help accessible to them that maybe wouldn't have been accessible otherwise.
Yes, definitely. They're kind of a trapped audience in terms of they're at the school. And so, anytime you want to pull a student to connect with them, to check in on them, to make sure you followed up with something, they're there. It isn't like they have to be dropped off, or, there is a schedule where it's distance away from the house, or, transportation is the problem. It is the school. So certainly a huge advantage is that as well. And working with parents in so many different ways, and opportunities for them to hopefully come to the school, or for you to go to the community and to work with them.
Yes. Be able to go out. I know a lot of times school counselors have big meetings together, and then they collaborate and consult with each other on how to best serve the student in a specific situation, which is super cool.
Yeah, I remember in the field we had cluster groups, and we would get together maybe every 6 or 8 weeks, but it was so nice to have that connection again with networking, but also talking about different ideas, different activities that have been successful with students, and innovative, and the creative part too, I'd say an advantage. There's so many different creative opportunities depending what time and effort you want to put into it, but so many different things that you really could do and have fun with in terms of lessons and activities and units.
And it sounds like you've done it all. You're so inspirational. So inspirational. Oh, it's true though. So I know that it's a wonderful job, but there are some, and when I say disadvantages, I mean like, what are some tough parts? Like,
challenges?
Yes, challenges. Great word.
Yeah, and we hear these all the time, even when I go recently to site visits. So I just finished my last one earlier this week. And I always kind of hear the challenges. Every school is so unique and different as a system, every county, every level school. But some of those challenges, or you say disadvantages, kind of are themes throughout. One of them that we often hear is not enough time in the day, especially with all the different roles and all the different hats that school counselors wear, from, helping with testing, coordinating and scheduling, exceptional education paperwork, credit checks. There's just so many, child study meetings. There's so many different things and roles they play that a lot of times a challenge is not having enough time to do everything you want to do during that 8 hours when you have these students with you.
Yes.
So that's always a difficult thing, and certainly trying to overcome that with, schedules and having kind of a calendar, and everyone can see the calendar, because that plays into the next challenge that, again, is one that we hear so often. I mean, kind of talked a little about it, is that with so many roles, the confusion of what a school counselor does, in particular by administration, certain administrators not realizing all the specific expertise that a school counselor can bring, and having them do more direct services and related to that, because at times there are inappropriate tasks or roles or administrative duties that school counselors are assigned that takes them away from working in the classroom or working with small groups or teachers and consulting with parents. So that definitely, I would say, is a challenge and a disadvantage. And then, of course, you've got lack of resources, budget sometimes, and then sometimes lack of support in terms of what you're able to do. So those are the most common, I would say, challenges that school counselors face. And so trying to figure out, how can you, define what your role is? How could you organize your time where you're prioritizing? But, it took me a good 3 years when I started out, and I tell this to my students, that it took me 3 years as a beginning school counselor to realize I'm not going to have my to-do list checked at the end of the day. It's just going to continue and it'll get done, but I really had to prioritize and certainly meet with the students was the priority. And having those students and parents on campus is what I would do over other tasks, but to leave and be okay and having those boundaries, having, that balance is also something that school counselors really need to be intentional about is how do they have their own wellness and take care of themselves, because it could be very emotionally draining. And so that's something that's real important to look at.
Yeah, and if you have those boundaries, then you're more effective for the students, because then you're less likely to get burned out on this, day-to-day stuff. I remember one thing. I remember you saying it clearly up in the front of the class was about you really. It's your role to share with administration what you need. And at the time, I was teaching a peer counseling class, and I absolutely loved teaching the class. I mean, it was amazing. And I taught it for like 3 years, but it was half a day, and then the counseling was half a day. And I just didn't have time to fit it all in and do it all in an amazing way. So I went up to them at the end of one school year, and I, based on what you said, it gave me that awareness, but also it gave me that courage and almost that sense of responsibility, like they have no way of knowing unless I tell them. And I just told them, and of course I felt nervous, because I really wanted to be like amazing and do it all. But when I told them, they were very accepting. It's a wonderful school. They were very accepting, and the next year I got to do the counseling just for the full day, and just that one piece of information was so big, so huge in really changing the way that I was able to help the students.
You're so right. And that's part of when I think about advocacy in terms of advocating for the profession or even for your position, but it's not really so much about you, it's what you can offer to support students. Because I had the same thing, especially when you have an administrator that's very supportive and a school climate that's very positive, but they just don't know. Because I know that I had a very supportive elementary school principal who was so excited one day, and you may remember the story of coming into my office saying, "Oh, I'm so excited, you're now going to be on the wheel," like computers and PE and all those different classes. And she was so excited, and it had me to, at the end of the day, sit down with her and really explain how, I can see how that can sound like so exciting because I get more direct contact all the time in the classes with the rotating schedule, but that I wouldn't be able to tackle the small groups and one-on-one and consulting and some of those other things that I was doing because I'd be trapped into that cycle of being on the specials wheel. And she realized, oh, no, we don't want that. We want you to have a balance of all those things. And so even when you have a real supportive administrator, they may not know the perspective you're looking at. And so advocating and expressing your needs, so important because you never know what they don't know. And to them, it's a positive where you're realizing, oh, that may not be the best thing for what we need to do for our comprehensive program.
Yeah, and even at the best schools with the most wonderful people, and it really does seem like a responsibility to be able to share that information. It's not trying to get out of something. It's how can I be the most effective school counselor possible? So I know that as a child therapist and a family therapist, I work a lot. I'm a registered play therapist. I work a lot with school counselors in the community. I have them sign like the authorization for exchange of information. And it's really nice to have that collaboration. So can you talk a little bit about how school counselors can collaborate and consult with therapists in their community to really kind of benefit the student in the best way possible?
Yes, I definitely, in addition to being a great referral source, because as school counselors, you really want, reputable, excellent play therapists or child adolescent therapists to be able to refer. And you want several of those that you actually know where you're sending someone that really a family or students may need more comprehensive therapy. So I think that's part of it, is that being such a great referral source. But another part is what you mentioned is with the consent of parents. working together. I worked a lot with child therapists when I was in the elementary and middle, but when I'd be running a group or going to a classroom, or occasionally working with a student that was also being seen by a therapist, and the parent wanting us to collaborate and talk about what skills and tools they're doing in therapy, what we're doing here in the school, so I can kind of encourage and support that work. So we're really working together that way. I would say another way to collaborate, and I've done this too, is really using that expertise and co-facilitate, or co-present actually trainings and workshops. I've done that with teachers and staff. I've also done it with parents in terms of getting therapists to come to do professional development, maybe on signs of depression in adolescents, what to look for, looking at workshops for parents on maybe communication skills or avoiding power struggles, or filial therapy techniques with the younger, teachers, younger age teachers, or even parents coming in, of course, and teaching parents those basic skills. So, those are things just to bring in their expertise into the school environment and to help with training and workshops. I think I've done that quite often, and I found it very impactful and helpful really for everybody. And so those are some things that I would do, but really reaching out to your community resources. And of course, the therapist, that's one that you really want to reach out and have that relationship with. It's not just here's a referral, it's having that relationship and maybe providing any information. And of course, with the parent approval, but even as a school, using the knowledge that they can come in and do those trainings and workshops, I think is invaluable.
Yes, and they can be such a source of information that you don't always need a budget for. I know unfortunately, one year, many students had parent deaths in their family. So I reached out to the local hospice program and asked some questions, and it was profound. It was things of, a child, things that I didn't know yet. A child is speaking in present sense about the parent that had died, how should we respond? And it was such a rich conversation that I use that knowledge with me today, So I think it's just a way we can all come together to help these kids.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've talked about this, in class and in students, but there's crises in schools, and the district has crisis teams that come in, but when they leave, you really need that continuation. You really need to have that relationship for resources for parents, to have other, contacts that can be at the school or actually just referral to provide information to classroom teachers, and having that connection and that partnership is really invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I know I had the honor of presenting with you a couple of years ago. Has it been a couple of years ago? I think so. We talked about play therapy techniques that can be used in the school setting. So that was pretty neat too. And that was done at the master's level. Many of the students were master's level students.
Yeah, I think that was at the UCF counseling conference 2 years ago.
Yes, I love that. I put it right on my LinkedIn that I did that with you. So.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of needs for that, because it's taking those play therapy skills, but how can we modify them and make them more short-term uses in the schools for school counselors that aren't able to have a 50-minute session or 30-minute session all the time.
Yeah, and it was so cool. I mean, it was a great presentation. I hate to toot our own horn, but really present in some ways, very low cost, limited time that it takes to actually create the materials, and then some really practical things that can make a big difference. So it was super cool.
Now, we'll have to do it again, maybe at FSCA or ASCA.
Oh, I would love that. Love it. Now, the next question and set it up. The next question that I wrote sounds a little bit, I don't even know why I put it on there, because there's no such thing. What does a typical day in the life of a school counselor look like? I guess there is no typical day.
Yeah, there's no typical day. I mean, you may, like I said, you may have a to-do list. You may have this idea of, I'm going to come in and do this and this and this. And before you even get to your office, as you're walking out of the parking lot, there's going to be, something happening, or someone visiting the school, or a parent that really needs to meet with you about something critical, or a student that needs something, or a teacher. And so, really every day is so different. And I think, in talking to my interns and even visiting school counselor alumni and how successful they are, we always talk about those qualities of, because every day is so different, to be able to be flexible and adaptable and go with the situation, and take initiative. Take initiative in terms of what you need to do and what programs are necessary. It's not just do things because we've always done it this way. There needs to be that intentionality. But I think because every day is so different, to really adapt and be flexible. And that really is a great strength of successful school counselors, because there's no typical day. You're exactly right.
Yeah, I think without that flexibility, things get real hard real fast. You got to kind of go with the flow.
Yeah.
And know that your schedule is a rough draft.
You have to be able to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, suppose somebody listening to this maybe is thinking about going into the field of school counseling, or just wants to learn more about school counseling. Where are some places that they can go to learn more about it?
The first two places I think about, in addition to, of course, nearby universities like ours, University of Central Florida, and talking to a coordinator or even a school district, but online resources. I would say the National ASCA, American School Counseling Association website, and that is www.schoolcounselor.org. But that's a huge resource for a national one. And then we've got the Florida School Counseling Association for state organization, which really talks all about the roles of school counselors. They go into the ASCA national model, which really kind of defines the different areas and themes and elements of a school counseling comprehensive developmental program, which we really aim for. And so those are all those things that I would say they can get more information, even the requirements and the credentialing and certification of what's needed in terms of what roles you play and specific tasks that are involved in each different level. Those are on the website as well. Looking at ethics and the code of ethics is on there too. And actually on those websites, and if you become a member, there's articles, publications, and of course attending conferences, I would say, is a great way to learn more about it.
Yes.
And shadowing a school counselor. I always encourage, that's something free, is to find a school counselor nearby and ask if you can shadow them for the day, or at least just kind of talk to them for a little bit and interview them and get a sense of what that is. And again, every school is different and every county is different, but you still can get a sense of, wow, is this something that connects to me and speaks to me, and I would be passionate about it. And that's what we want. Those are the kind of people that we'd like to be in the field.
And I know that was one of your assignments in one of the classes. I can't remember which one it was, but actually at every level, I remember going to elementary, middle, and high school, and it was so valuable. Of course, it was like, oh man, I got to try to fit this in, but it was so worth it. I know.
I always tell them it's never something you're excited about, but when it's over, and one of the requirements is to actually go to the school, not just interview on the phone or online. It really has to be sitting there, because you get a sense of the system, the setting, and for some, individuals, they haven't been in an elementary school or middle school since their own education. And so getting you to the feel of the school and really meeting face to face and seeing what the office is like and how things are not typical every day and things happen all the time, gives you that sense also of the profession.
Yeah. And I remember Sarah Riley. I don't know if you remember her from the program. You probably do.
Yeah.
She used to be, she actually came to me for that interview, and I was so excited. I gave her like the super tour. And now she works there. Now she's a school counselor there, and they love her.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's right. I forgot she's in this county. Yeah. And so now you're mentoring. You're kind of the interviewee, giving back. And so, I think that's such a helpful assignment. And you know what we do now? I don't know if we did this with you, but in the course, the coordination class, we used to create classroom lessons and parent trainings, but we would present them to the class, and we would get in the role of, oh, you're all second graders, you're all first graders. Well, now the last couple of years, I take them out to different schools, and we actually do the lesson, and I go out there and observe in an elementary, middle, or high. And oftentimes we use, we have UCP is right near us, Bales East Charter School, and 50% of their population are students with exceptionalities, unique abilities. And so I think it's so great for school counselors in training to really know how also to modify some of the lessons they're doing, some of the counseling techniques to students that are diverse learners, unique abilities, because they need to realize that their caseload is everybody. It's the ESC students, it's the ESOL students, it's all learners. And so we do that as well, where we go to UCP and do those lessons. And so very rewarding and impactful.
Wow, that's incredible. And good hands-on experience, and they get to actually see what it's like. Well,
it's wonderful. It really is.
Thank you so much for being on the show. We're almost out of time. I just want to give a big shout out to the program there at UCF at University of Central Florida. It's one of the best programs in our nation. I really think it's a great program.
Yeah, we're number 7 in the nation. We're number 7 now, and we're the highest ranked program at the University of Central Florida. So we're very proud of that.
Yes. That's wonderful, and it's CACREP accredited, which is incredible too. So, well, thank you so much. I will catch you later, Dr. Van Horn.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I hope this was helpful for all the child therapists and wanting more information. Feel free to give out my contact information.
Oh, I will. I have it all in the show notes, your bio and the information. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
To join our growing community for free, just go to playtherapycommunity.com and find us on Facebook, too.
Thanks for listening to the Play Therapy Community Podcast. Until next time, bye-bye!